Hi, everybody. Thanks for stopping in. Next up on my workbench, let's start with the Stihl 036. Get on my bench. Hi there. My name is Erica, and I'm so happy that you're here today. We have a Stihl 036 on the workbench, and the customer says that it won't start. So come along with me, and let's find out why he can't get this chainsaw started. Well, here we are with a Stihl 036. This saw is probably from the mid to late 90s, maybe the early 2000s. I see this one has the red lever, and I believe that plastic is probably broken, and that's why there is duct tape on it. The elastostart handle is broken. That's why the handle hangs like that. It's not because the rope isn't wound properly. It's because the handle is broken. Just looking at the plastics, the handles. This model does have a decompression valve. I see that somebody has punched a hole in the front of the muffler right there. So the customer says he can't get this saw started. It wouldn't start for him, he thinks, roughly 7 to 8 years ago. So it's been sitting ever since. So we're going to find out why this thing wouldn't start for him 7 or 8 years ago. I hope there hasn't been fuel in it this whole time. Yeah, just a little bit of dirty fuel down in the bottom of it there. Okay, so I think the first thing I'll do is I'm going to pull the bar and chain off this. Just easier to work on it and safer with the bar and chain off of it. The rim sprocket has quite a bit of wear. So if we repair this saw, that would need replacing. There's a little bit of something down in that tank. I'll just dump it and see if I can get it out. Just a little bit of dirty fuel. It's pretty clean in there. I think all of the dirt came out in that little bit of fuel. Take a look at this fuel line. Yeah, the fuel line just snapped, actually. It just snapped right off. Rotten. Just rotted right off. Well, I was going to go outside with this and try to start it, but obviously I won't be now. Well, let's peel back a few layers here and see what we can find. Must be a good size hole or crack in behind there. Looks like a well-used air filter. Just pull that top cover off. We have a customer coming in to pick up a new chainsaw, so let's get it ready for him. This is a Stihl MS201 rear handle. Okay, so we've got good spark. We've got an NGK plug, BPMR 7A. Let me grab my camera and we'll take a quick peek. So we are looking at an aftermarket piston and cylinder here. The fellow who dropped this saw off didn't mention this saw had ever been rebuilt. You're looking at a pop-up piston. You see the raised area in the middle of the piston. We're seeing scoring. And the piston won't clear the exhaust port. It won't go down any further than that. So I guess I'm curious now, who rebuilt this saw? And did the person who rebuilt this saw, does he or she know why this saw needed rebuild? I see people rebuild chainsaws all the time, but they don't find out what caused the problem in the first place. Let's do a compression test. Got my Echo compression tester. And we've got about 105 pounds of compression. That's not great. You just notice that decompression valve, I just used my tool and pushed up on it. It was actually in the down position. So let me just try this again with the decompression valve in the out position. There we go. Just about 170 pounds of compression. Just to make sure, let me reset that. We'll do it again, starting from 0. Decompression valve is out. There you go. Let's pull the muffler off this thing. And there's a couple T27s back in there. Spark arrestor is right there, and it is clean. The piston has some brown staining on it, likely from fuel. Poor fuel quality can create that brown staining. The intake side of the cylinder, there's a bit of scoring on it, some carbon scoring. But this thing has lots of compression. Let's pull the carburetor off of this. A couple 8 mils. Top portion of the handle needs to come off to slide that carb off, so I'll just pull this off. This one has a flat head up in there. My kids were just in here asking me to go to Costco. Costco on a Saturday afternoon. Sounds like a great time. Okay, so handle and screw. So there's our carburetor off. This thing's quite dirty. Lots of fine dust everywhere. I'll block that intake and impulse off with this carb block. Once I have this thing sealed up, that is a good time for cleaning. The muffler's out of the way, the carb's out of the way, and I can get deep cleaning done on it. That's if we're fixing it. We don't know exactly what's wrong with it yet. This thing either has an air leak, fuel system issues, or both. Somebody couldn't diagnose it or fix it 8 years ago. So hopefully we can take care of it now. Okay, so that is all blocked off. We'll throw his spark plug back in. Okay, my exhaust port is blocked off intake impulse spark plug. That just leaves us with that decompression valve. And we'll plug that decompression valve hole up. Okay, we're all sealed up. Let's do our test. Okay, my tool's working good. Hook up to the port, and we are going to pull vacuum first. I can't build any vacuum at all. Pressure. Okay, something's wrong. It's either one of my connections or we have a major leak somewhere. Oh, well, that could be a problem. Here, I'll show you. Let me get this out of the way. We'll never be able to build vacuum or pressure with the impulse line. There's the end of it right there. It's not attached. Right at the end of my flashlight, right there, there's the impulse line, not attached. So that would be a big problem. Was this saw parked 8 years ago because of that? It seems kind of unbelievable, doesn't it? So right there, that white fitting, that's where it would have been attached at one time. What do you say? Won't start. Wouldn't start from 8 years ago, so it's been sitting. Jeez. He had this thing to a shop. I'm going to reattach the impulse line, and then we'll test again. So we have bigger problems here than this, I think. This is a minor problem. This could be why it won't start. The reason we have high compression, this thing has a pop-up piston in it, but something's wrong. We're going to dig deeper, but let's start with just this impulse line. Okay, so the impulse line is back in place. We'll hook up our tester again and see if we have different results. So run vacuum. And we cannot build vacuum. Let's go to pressure. And you see that we have a pressure leak. So we'll make sure it's not one of my connections. What are the chances that somebody rebuilt a chainsaw with an air leak? I'd say there's a pretty good chance. So I've just got some soapy water here. I'll just make sure it's not my intake or my exhaust port blocks leaking. I'm pretty confident it's not. My intake block is not leaking. My exhaust block is not leaking. Interestingly, we do have a bit of a pressure leak at the spark plug and the decompression plug. Both of them are tight, and both of them leak pressure. But we also have a major vacuum leak, and that's not them. So there you're seeing aftermarket quality at its best. I just pulled the spark plug out, and I put an adapter with an O-ring in the spark plug hole, and I have tested again, and I have eliminated the spark plug hole leak. So we're gonna go dig for our crank seal leak now. I'm assuming it's a crank seal. When you pull a vacuum and you get that right there, and then it starts to hold right about there, that's classic crank seal. I just went and blew a little bit of the dirt out of there. This saw is pretty filthy. I'll try to knock the flywheel off first. If it doesn't easily come off, then I'll just pull it off. Let me grab my homemade hammer. You guys have probably seen me use this, and you may have wondered where this handle came from. So quite a few years ago, we tore down an old barn on the property here, and they used to make homemade nails or pegs, and that is one of the homemade nails that came out of that barn. And just turned it into a hammer handle. Neat, eh? I like homemade tools. An old guy down the street told me this is called a trennel, short for a tree nail. Okay, so I'll go give that area around that crank seal a little bit of a cleaning. You can see how filthy it is, and then we'll test it. Okay, there is our crank seal. I'm going to put some oil in the crank seal, and we're going to pull vacuum. Ready? This is just 2-stroke oil that I'm putting on here. Oh, where'd the oil go? We can do that again. Here comes some more oil, and let's pull vacuum. I can hear it, I can see it disappearing, and you can see the gauge. So I'm not a certified private investigator or anything like that, but there's a pretty good chance that this crank seal has been leaking for a long time and scored the original piston cylinder, and then somebody rebuilt this without doing any diagnostic work. Pretty good chance. Just imagine buying this chainsaw on Facebook Marketplace and the guy telling you, oh yeah, it probably just needs the carb cleaned or something. You can get yourself into some deep, deep trouble on Facebook Marketplace. And I just glanced over at the carburetor sitting on my table here. There's screws missing out of it. 1, 2. Oh boy. So far, we have found the impulse line off. We have discovered a leaking crank seal. We have discovered the carburetor missing screws. I wonder what else we're going to find here. I'm going to pull my pressure vac tools off of this thing, and we're going to dig a little deeper and find out what the clinky sound is coming from inside that engine. So when I was pulling this saw over doing a compression test, you guys may have heard a sound coming from this. Sometimes when I'm taking a break, I will edit these videos up to date. And when I edit them, sometimes I can hear things louder through the camera than I can in person. And there's definitely some kind of noise coming from inside this engine. And we're going to find out what. So let me get my tools off of it. Maybe it just needs a spark plug. So I watch Facebook Marketplace and Kijiji. Kijiji is something that we have up here for selling used stuff on, similar to a Craigslist or something like that. And I see chainsaws post all the time. Won't start, won't run, this or that. And then they give their opinion on what it could be. It probably just needs a new spark plug. I think the most common one I see is it probably just needs the carb cleaned. You could get yourself into a world of hurt buying something like this on Facebook. And I see these chainsaws posted for they're not cheap. I see saws posted like that for $300, $400, $500. And someone goes and buys them. They're marked pending, and then they're gone. It's kind of terrifying, actually. Tyler's over there cruising Facebook Marketplace right now, and we're looking for a good example of what I just described to you. What'd you find, Tyler?
Stihl 036 Pro, $350. Reason for the low price, it will need a tune-up. It has a lot of RPM at idle.
So there is the adapter that I had in the spark plug hole. I have been asked in the comments before if you can do a pressure vac test through the spark plug hole. And yes, you can. So if you loosen your muffler, put a piece of rubber in there and block it off, loosen your carburetor and block it off as well. Some people use just a piece of inner tube. That'll work fine. So if you block all those off, you can use this to hook up to your pressure vac tester. I bought this tool from Echo. Oh, Tyler went and got me the part number for it. There it is, 91018. Echo. I believe that we are hearing rod bearing noises. I don't know if it's the big end or the little end. My x-ray vision's not working. Let's pull the cylinder off of this and take a look. Okay, so those weren't tight. Okay, so here is our piston. There's our connecting rod, the wrist pin. So where is the noise coming from? You see that slop? So either the bore of the piston is too big, or it's the wrist pin. I'm not really sure what's going on here, but that slop is, that's where the noise is coming from. When I was pulling it over for that compression test and we were hearing a clinking sound, that was the wrist pin and the piston slapping together. What I do know is that this repair just got a whole lot more expensive. When a saw gets dropped off and someone says it won't start, that could be anything from a simple, well, we found the fuel line rotted right off. So it could be simple fuel system work. And in this case, the further we dig, the worse it gets. The crank bearings have a bit of noise to them. I'm going to put the mic up so you can hear it. Does anybody know what brand of piston and cylinder this is? Why is there no name on it? Are they not proud of what they build? They should put their name on it. Well, there we go. There's a Stihl 036 that won't start. And now I can tell them why it won't start. The impulse line being off is probably a big part of it. The fuel line being rotten is probably another part of it. The carburetor's missing screws, so who knows? I could open that thing up and have a look in it, I guess. It probably doesn't really matter at this point. What do you guys think? Do you want me to open the carb up and take a look? You got a few extra minutes? I got a few minutes. Okay. Let me go blow this thing off, and then we will take it apart. Today we'll use the carb stand that Stu built for me. Thank you, Stu. And that is full of crud in there. Can you see that? Just full of junk. Actually, you know what? The screen isn't even in there. I thought underneath all that dirt it was there, but it's not. So the screen is just totally missing. Okay, we'll pull this side off. 2 screws are already missing for us, so we'll pull the last 2 out. And that one wasn't even tight. I'm going to have to ask him who repaired this chainsaw. Look at that, not even tight. It's possible those 2 missing ones just vibrated loose and are gone because those other 2 were loose. Wow, that is one crispy diaphragm. Okay, what's behind door number 3? I think we've seen enough, but we'll check the metering lever. Yeah, it's too low. Way too low. This thing just had everything going against it. I just checked the carb settings, and the high jet was out 3/4 of a turn, and the low jet was out half a turn. So working on your own chainsaws is one thing, but working on other people's chainsaws and charging them money to do work like this is another. The man who owns the saw, he does not work on his own stuff. He paid someone for this disaster. Well, here we are with a Stihl 036 spread across my workbench in pieces. If you've watched this whole video, then you know I have a basket case of a saw sitting on my bench. This saw came in because the customer said that it would not start for him. It wouldn't start for him 8 years ago, so it's been sitting ever since. He didn't mention anything about a rebuild attempt. Maybe he's forgotten that someone tried to fix this saw for him. I hope they didn't charge him very much because they did a really poor job. So I don't think this saw will be going back together. I will talk to him tomorrow and see, but I'm pretty sure this is going to turn into just a part saw. So I guess that's it for the 036 that won't start. It's time for a fresh coffee and on to the next chainsaw. This is probably one of the worst that I have seen recently, and I've seen a lot of them. Thank you so much for being here, and I'll see you in the next video.